introduction. So my name's Toe Bautista. I'm a research analyst at GSR. GSR is a multi-stage investor, most notably through market making, but also OTC trading and venture capital. This week, we announced a $100 million investment into a NASDAQ-listed company called Upexi, in which we hope to instill a Solana-based treasury strategy. So we're obviously very bullish Solana on many use cases, but while the kind of prevailing narrative has really been, Solana's just a meme coin chain, or it's just all speculation, we think the next iteration of Solana's growth is really going to be led by utility and really led through AI. So I think decentralized trading, data, and agents are going to be the three sectors that really set a very solid foundation for this. So firstly, just a brief introduction around AI. So AI obviously is probably the biggest technological innovation since the internet, with the potential to surpass it entirely. Leaders in the field suggest that top foundational models will cognitively outperform humans by 2027. And we see that as kind of the cost of knowledge work declines to the cost of inference, pretty much everything we do will be AI coded. The Mag 7's CapEx in 2023 just on AI was $160 billion. We've seen this grow to $260 billion in 2024, and estimates expect this to exceed $300 billion in 2025. Microsoft alone is set to spend $80 billion on data centers. And then in 2015, Google, Meta, and Microsoft allocated around 5 to 10% of their yearly revenues to CapEx. This year, we've seen that grow and double and triple to 15 and 30%. So this notion that we might have hit some local top in kind of compute spend, while that might be true, the juice is very clearly worth the squeeze. And again, even if this levels off, we anticipate this to just keep growing over time. And then so a common question is where do crypto and AI overlap, right? Closed source AI kind of does run just fine without it, but just as finance becomes far more transparent, far more efficient, and far more innovative on crypto rails, AI is the exact same way. So for crypto, the ability to enforce digital property rights, but then also offer applications across this shared state really unlocks a lot of efficiency. So we see this through kind of the top applications within crypto. Pump.fun obviously generated $100 million of ARR in just 217 days. When you compare this with Cursor, which is probably the fastest growing AI app, that did the same thing in just under a year. Similarly, Camino, I think, has $2 billion of TVL, and they have under 20 employees. So the ability for crypto to really bootstrap networks and bootstrap, honestly, economies is very complementary to a world in AI that is just really built from kind of distribution, but then also abundance, right? So crypto's ability to kind of enforce those digital property rights and then monetize the specific layer of the stack in which you kind of interact with is a very uniquely crypto-specific attribute that is, again, very symbiotic with AI. And so looking at the training of these kind of actual models themselves, so compute usage has rose 4x year over year. And so the way a lot of the kind of current construction works is these GPUs have to be co-located in ways to synchronize kind of model parameters and the weights of the model. So in this paradigm, the only way to scale is by just building ever larger data centers, right? So we see this Meta announced a 2 gigawatt factory in Louisiana. I think it's almost the size of Manhattan. So again, the only way to scale is just building larger data centers, which again is just not sustainable from a power standpoint, from an infrastructure standpoint, but also from a cost standpoint, right? So it's what does the next iteration of this look like? And the answer is distributed training. So the way distributed training works is how can we get kind of non-trusted parties across disparate data centers, disparate data warehouses to coordinate these synchronization methods. And so again, we've seen Google and OpenAI are actually already implementing this. The CEO of Anthropic has a kind of weekly newsletter, and just this week he announced he actually earmarked Prime Intellect, which is a decentralized training company, as kind of where the future is going. And so we actually think crypto can enable this mainly because this is exactly what blockchains do. It's how can we get non-trusted parties and kind of compute to kind of come to consensus and then also synchronize these parameters. So for example, Noose Research is one of the kind of preeminent startups that are doing this on Solana. So in December 2024, Noose released a 15 billion parameter model using distributed training and decoupled momentum. And again, they ran with a very, very high accuracy. They just released Psyche, which is currently on testnet right now on Solana, which helps to enable distributed training of LLMs between, again, untrusted parties, right? So the whole goal here is how can we build this end-to-end ecosystem of an AI, almost like an open AI on-chain? And that's exactly what Noose is trying to accomplish on Solana, with the end goal of hosting, again, open source models from the data to pre-training to fine-tuning, and again, all of that on Solana. Next is data. So I think data is actually one of the most underappreciated modes within really just AI. It creates network effects and also kind of creates a competitive advantage by limiting your barrier to entry, right? So if I'm creating an AI model, that data is obviously like very, very core to that training. But as the model improves, then the data becomes even more entrenched at that layer. So this is great for companies like OpenAI who have very, very like just massive troves of data, but also entrenches their edge because nobody has access to that data. And so with less than 0.1% of the internet that's estimated to be scrapable, this is just like a very classic example where there's a monopoly, or there's a monopoly of data between all of these OpenAI labs, right? And so how can crypto provide like a good counterweight to this? Well, if you introduce like a data economy, or excuse me, a market economy like at this data layer, you really kind of allow a two-sided marketplace to just naturally occur. So you can have a world where me as the user right now, if I contribute my data, I see no revenue on the other end of that. Similarly, if I want to build a proprietary data set, I have no way to actually like tokenize that. And so Vana and Grass are actually kind of creating a data marketplace where the commodity being traded is training data for AI. So much has been said of like tokenization and RWAs, we're going to move everything on chain, but the implementation obviously has been very lackluster. And so I think like if you look at the natural progression of where kind of tokenization goes, we've gone from projects to meme coins to Trump coins, AI agent coins. I actually think like training data is a very, very unique use case for this. If you take like AI XBT, for example, part of the reason it ran to like a 700 million market cap, obviously animal spirits were a little involved there, but it's because it like spoke crypto Twitter language, right? And that in and of itself was very, very valuable. And the only reason, again, that it could do that is having this proprietary data. So you can imagine a world where instead of it just being like this dumb Twitter bot that could just like tweet every 30 minutes, you can actually integrate that from a consumer layer. You can integrate that on a DeFi layer, and then you can also tokenize that, right? And so that becomes very, very valuable in a world, again, where that proprietary data is just inaccessible and also unmonetizable. And then lastly, AI agents. Again, so we do think like decentralized training and then also data are very foundational layers of the AI stack. But we actually think agents and applications obviously are going to accrue the majority of the value, with agents perhaps being that seminal use case. Jensen Huang in January said that AI agents are $1 trillion market, and while he probably kind of called the local top there, we do think AI agents are probably going to be the #1 actors on chain. And so the main thing with the first iteration of AI agents, the reason they failed is because there was like a horrible incentive alignment, right? So if I'm a developer and I was building an AI agent framework, also they ran up incredibly quick, so there was no incentive for me to keep building. Similarly, if I was an open source dev and I was contributing to a framework, there's no way for me to actually like be rewarded for my contributions. Similarly, on the other side, it's like if I was a user, I could just buy the token instead of actually like using the project themselves. So there's no reason for developers to keep developing and then users to actually like use any of this stuff. So the next iteration of this is like, how can we actually match an economy for users to actually use the projects, then developers to actually, again, get rewarded for their contributions. And so Wayfinder is doing this again, like on Solana, where if I create a path and the more times people actually use that path, I can actually get compensated. So it handles all the on-chain tasks like through natural language processing. So again, we've seen this through like kind of the ChatGPT search prompts, but you can actually imagine a world where instead of me as like a user incentivizing an agent, agents can actually incentivize users to do activities. So this could be interesting, again, when you think of like that data construction, where if an agent puts up a bounty for market data or CoinGecko data, it can incentivize humans to actually like fulfill that task and then, again, compensate them for their actions. And then so all in, like decentralized training does prove like Solana can coordinate, again, like massive computational workloads, turns like GPUs into this like AI engine. And if you can build like a full-on end-to-end AI ecosystem, it can not only just like compete with the rituals of the world or more like on-chain actors, but like can actually be some meaningful alternative to closed-source AI. And then again, data, specifically like Grass, uses Solana to give users like their control back of that data, and also can like create again that marketplace. So it encourages not only like AI development on Solana, but also like full-on end-to-end model weights. And then lastly, AI agents. I know this term has like completely been like bastardized over the past like 4 months, but like there very is clearly the future. And being able to execute in a non-deterministic way, especially like on chain where there's so much UX complexity, is a massive need for crypto. So providing that speed, scalability, and more importantly, like the composability. Like OpenAI could only they release like Operator, which is like their AI agent, and you could only use like Instacart or StubHub, and it's very, very inefficient if the third party that I'm entrusting for that data can only select from, again, like whitelisted applications. Whereas, again, like on Solana, you have just a very, very valuable state, but then you have all the applications available for an AI agent to actually like transverse across. So all in, like, again, Solana has really gone through a lot of waves, very speculative. But again, in a world where we're moving like more to real utility on chain, in a world where AI, again, is going to be coded in everything we do, Solana is probably the best position to do so, and we certainly think so as well. So if you're building across any of these vectors, please reach out to me or anybody at GSR, and we'd love to help. Cool. Thanks.